The Galactic Concord convened on the orbital station Viridia Prime, a shimmering hub of diplomacy where dozens of species had gathered for over a century to maintain peace. Humanity, represented by envoy Daniel Carter and his aide Lena Ruiz, arrived with cautious optimism. For years, Earth had pushed for equal representation, technological parity, and an end to the Concord's exploitative trade mandates. But the elder races, the haughty Virelians, the calculating Karathi, and the ancient Mizari, dismissed human concerns as the tantrums of a young, impulsive species. Daniel Carter adjusted his dark blue uniform as he stepped off the shuttle and onto the gleaming platform of Viridia Prime. The air smelled sterile, filtered through alien systems that had never known rain or soil. Around him, beings of all shapes moved with practiced grace. Tall Virelians with silver skin and slitted eyes, stocky Karathi wrapped in armored cloaks, and the slow-moving Mizari whose translucent limbs pulsed with soft light. Humans were still rare here, often treated like curious children who had wandered into a council of elders. Lena Ruiz walked beside him, her expression calm but her fingers tapping lightly against her datapad. She had spent the last 3 weeks reviewing every treaty, every footnote, every hidden clause the Concord had slipped into agreements with Earth. Nothing was fair. Human colonies paid double tariffs for jumpgate access. Their scientific discoveries were claimed as shared heritage, while their requests for reverse engineering alien tech were denied. And now, after decades of patience, Earth had one final proposal to present. The Grand Chamber was a vast dome of polished obsidian and hovering light orbs. Delegates sat in tiered rings according to species seniority. Humans were placed near the bottom, just above the insectoid Zenth and the aquatic Glorvans, species that barely spoke galactic standard. Daniel took his seat back straight, eyes forward. Lena stood slightly behind him as protocol demanded for aides. High Arbiter Zelkor of the Virelians rose. His voice echoed through the chamber, smooth and cold like polished stone. We gather today to consider the latest petition from Sol 3, Earth as they call it. They request full membership in the Concord, equal voting rights, and unrestricted access to deep space resource zones. A ripple of murmurs passed through the chamber. Some delegates chuckled. One Karathi even snorted. Zelkor raised a slender hand for silence. Let us be clear. Humanity has shown promise. Their resilience is noted. Their art, quaint, but emotional volatility remains a critical flaw. They wage wars over ideology. They mourn their dead with excessive displays. They question authority at every turn. These are not traits of a stable galactic citizen. Daniel felt his jaw tighten but kept his face neutral. He had heard this before, in private meetings, in leaked communiques, in the smirks of diplomats at formal dinners. Humanity was too passionate, too unpredictable, too human. When it was his turn to speak, Daniel stood slowly. He did not raise his voice. He did not gesture dramatically. He simply looked into the eyes of every delegate he could see and said, "We are not asking for special treatment. We are asking for fairness, for the same rights granted to species who joined the Concord centuries after us. The Karathi gained full mining rights in the Helios belt within 10 years of contact. We have waited 70. The Mizari share quantum navigation data with their allies. We are denied even basic schematics for atmospheric processors." He paused, letting the words settle. Earth has contributed to every peacekeeping mission since our induction. We've sent doctors to plague worlds, engineers to failing colonies, and food to systems struck by solar flares. Yet when we ask for a voice in decisions that affect our survival, we are told we are too emotional to be trusted. Lena stepped forward slightly, handing him a small crystal drive. This contains our formal proposal, Daniel continued. Shared oversight of the Orion Rim mining operations, mutual technology exchange under verified protocols, and a vote on all matters concerning human-inhabited systems. Nothing more. Nothing less. Zelkor's lips curled into something that was not quite a smile. And if we refuse? Then we will reconsider our participation in this body, Daniel said evenly. The chamber fell silent. Not out of respect, but disbelief. No species had ever threatened to walk away. The Concord was the only game in town. To leave was to become irrelevant, isolated, vulnerable. Zelkor laughed, a dry, brittle sound. You misunderstand your place, Envoy Carter. The Concord does not exist to serve your ambitions. It exists to maintain order, and order requires hierarchy. You are young, You will learn, he turned to the assembly. All in favor of tabling Earth's petition indefinitely? Hands rose. Not all, but enough. The Varelians, the Korathi, the Mizari all voted as one. Even some minor species, fearing the wrath of the elders, raised their limbs in agreement. Only 2 abstained, the Zenth and the Glorvans, who likely did not understand the motion. Daniel did not wait for the official tally. He turned to Lena and nodded once. She tucked the crystal drive back into her satchel. Without a word, they walked out of the grand chamber. Their footsteps echoed on the obsidian floor louder than any speech. Behind them, the laughter began. Not loud but sharp, like glass breaking in the distance. Someone joked that humans would probably go home and build a giant statue of themselves. Another mused they might start their own club with the Zenth. The comments were meant to sting, but Daniel did not look back. Outside the chamber, the corridor was empty. Soft lights glowed along the walls, casting long shadows. Lena finally spoke. They really think we're just going to accept this. They think we have no choice, Daniel replied. That's their mistake. Back on their shuttle, as Viridia Prime shrank in the viewport, Lena pulled up a secure channel to Earth Command. Mission failed, she said quietly. Talks have collapsed. On the other end, there was no anger. Only a single word, understood. Daniel stared out at the stars. He thought of Earth, of cities lit by sunset, of oceans that stretched forever, of people who argued, loved, built, and dreamed without permission from silver-skinned elders in a sterile dome. Humanity had asked nicely. They had shown patience. They had played by rules written by others. Now they would write their own. The shuttle jumped to warp, leaving Viridia Prime and the old galaxy behind. Back on Earth, the United Terran Council convened an emergency session. Public broadcasts showed citizens watching the Concord's mockery with growing anger. Yet instead of war cries, a quiet resolve spread. President Nora Hayes addressed the world. We asked for a seat at the table. They laughed. So we're building our own table. Within weeks, all human embassies across Allied systems were recalled. Trade routes were rerouted inward. Human ships vanished from neutral zones. The silence that followed was louder than any protest. News feeds that once buzzed with galactic gossip now showed empty docking bays where alien freighters used to land. Markets that traded alien spices and Varelian silk fell quiet. Children who had learned galactic standard in school now practiced engineering schematics and quantum math. The shift was not sudden but steady, like a river changing course after a landslide. President Hayes did not declare war. She did not even raise her voice. In a broadcast from the old Capitol Dome in Washington, she stood before a simple backdrop of Earth's blue and green. For 70 years we tried to fit into their system, she said. We followed their rules, paid their fees, and swallowed their insults. No more. From today, Earth answers to Earth. Across the planet, people listened. In Mumbai, engineers shut down joint research labs with Korathi firms and turned their focus inward. In Buenos Aires, shipwrights began converting cargo haulers into modular defense platforms. In Nairobi, students enrolled in accelerated programs for astrophysics and neural interface design. There was no panic, only purpose. The conquered barely noticed. Their intelligence networks, long dismissive of human noise, reported only minor unrest. A few fringe analysts warned of strange energy signatures near Neptune, but their reports were buried under routine updates about trade deficits and cultural festivals. To the elder races, humanity was sulking, a child slamming a door after being denied dessert. But behind that door, something was being built. Beyond the orbit of Neptune, hidden in the shadow of a captured asteroid, Project Aegis hummed to life. It had existed in secret for years, a quiet response to the conquered slow suffocation of human advancement. Now it moved from theory to reality. Massive construction drones, guided by AI cores trained on centuries of human innovation, assembled frameworks that bent physics in ways the Varelians had never imagined. Dr. Eli Brooks stood on the observation deck of Station Aegis 7, his hands in his pockets watching a new hull take shape. He was not a soldier. He was a physicist who once taught at Stanford and loved stargazing with his daughter. But when the Concorde denied Earth access to zero-point energy research, he had volunteered for this. They think energy is a privilege, he told his team. We know it's a right. Beside him, engineer Maya Tran reviewed stress simulations on her tablet. Her fingers moved fast, adjusting tolerances, rerouting power conduits. She had grown up in a lunar colony. the daughter of miners who dreamed of better. Now she was designing the backbone of humanity's next leap. "This isn't just a ship," she said quietly. "It's a promise." The promise was simple: no more begging, no more waiting. If the galaxy would not share its future, humanity would build its own. On Earth, factories that once made consumer goods now produced quantum capacitors and gravimetric stabilizers. Universities became innovation hubs, their campuses buzzing with civilian scientists and retired pilots working side by side. Even artists contributed. Composers wrote morale anthems, painters designed new insignias, and poets reminded everyone why they fought, not for conquest, but for dignity. The Concord's trade sanctions backfired. Cut off from alien markets, Earth's economy turned inward and grew stronger. Local solutions replaced imported luxuries. Solar farms expanded. Fusion reactors reached 98% efficiency. Food synthesizers fed billions without a single off-world grain. Humanity discovered it did not need the galaxy as much as the galaxy had assumed. Yet Earth did not isolate completely. Quiet signals went out to fringe worlds, planets the Concord ignored or exploited. A medical drone here. A clean water purifier there. No demands. No treaties, just help. And slowly, those worlds began to listen. Back at Aegis 7, the first prototype ship neared completion. It had no name yet. It didn't need one. Its design was sleek, silent, and utterly unlike anything in the Concord fleet. It used phased array shielding that absorbed enemy scans like fog swallowing light. Its engines ran on stabilized vacuum energy, leaving no exhaust trail. And its core was linked to a neural network trained on human history. Not just battles, but art, philosophy, and compassion. "They'll call us reckless," Eli said one night, watching the stars through the viewport. "Let them," Maya replied. "We're not trying to impress them anymore." Meanwhile, President Hayes met with military and civilian leaders in a secure bunker beneath the Rockies. No grand speeches, just plans, evacuation routes for colonies, defense grids for Sol system, and a simple rule: never strike first but never be vulnerable again. The public saw none of this. They saw schools reopening with new curricula. They saw neighbors sharing power during grid tests. They saw hope, not in galactic approval but in their own hands. 6 weeks after the walkout, the last human ambassador left the Viridia Prime embassy. The building was sealed, its lights turned off. On the door, someone had left a small plaque. It read, "We tried to talk." The Concord dismissed it as petulance, but in hidden shipyards, in underground labs, in quiet homes where parents taught their children to think freely, humanity was no longer asking for permission. It was preparing, and the galaxy, busy with its old games and ancient grudges, did not see the storm coming. It did not hear the hum of new engines. It did not feel the shift in the stars. Earth had gone silent, but silence sometimes is the loudest warning of all. 6 months after the walkout, a Karathi patrol vessel strayed too close to the Sol exclusion zone, a newly declared human-controlled space. It sent a routine hail. No response. Then, without warning, the vessel's sensors went dark. It reappeared 3 days later near Karathi space. Its crew unharmed, but its weapons systems and navigation cores completely dismantled, replaced with a single data crystal containing schematics for a clean water filtration system. The Karathi ship, the Iron Fang, had been on a standard patrol near the outer rim of human-claimed territory. Captain Vorak, a veteran of 3 border skirmishes, saw the Sol exclusion zone as a joke, a line drawn by children who had slammed the door on the grown-ups. He ordered his ship to cross it, just to see what would happen. His crew laughed as they passed the invisible boundary, expecting nothing more than static on their comms. But the moment they entered, every screen on the bridge flickered and died. Lights dimmed, gravity fluctuated for 3 heartbeats, then silence. Not the silence of power loss, but the silence of something watching. Vorak shouted orders, but his voice echoed in a dead comms channel. The ship's AI refused to respond. Even the emergency beacons went quiet. For 72 hours, the Iron Fang drifted, blind and helpless. The crew grew tense, expecting an attack, aborting, or worse. But nothing came. No weapons fire. No demands. No threats. Just stillness. Then, as suddenly as it began, power returned. Navigation rebooted. Life support hummed back to life. The ship was now deep in neutral space, far from where it had been. And in the main engineering bay, where the plasma cannons and targeting arrays used to be, sat a smooth, palm-sized crystal glowing faintly blue. Vorak ordered it analyzed. It contained no malware, no traps, just detailed plans for a water purification unit, capable of turning toxic sludge into drinkable water using minimal energy. The design was elegant, efficient, and far beyond anything the Karathi had. It could save millions on drought-stricken colony worlds. Confused and humiliated, Vorak reported the incident to High Command. At first, they accused him of fabricating the story to cover a navigation error. But when 3 other patrol ships reported similar encounters, each returning with disabled weapons and gifts of medical nanites, crop seed hybrids, or atmospheric stabilizers, the Concord could no longer ignore it. Panic rippled through the diplomatic corps. How had humans disabled advanced warships without firing a shot? Worse, why show mercy while demonstrating terrifying capability? Varelian analysts scoffed, calling it a bluff. They must have used hidden mines or drones, one insisted during a closed session. No species can vanish a ship and reappear it elsewhere without energy signatures. But Mizari elders, who remembered older wars and forgotten technologies, grew uneasy. They had studied human history. They knew humans did not bluff. They built. They adapted. They surprised. Meanwhile, human freighters began appearing in fringe systems, places the Concord had long ignored. On the dusty world of Keswick 9, where children drank from radioactive streams, a Terran cargo hauler landed unannounced. Out stepped pilot Chris Dawson, wearing a plain gray jumpsuit and carrying a crate of portable desalination units. He spoke no grand words. He just set up the machines, showed the locals how to use them, and left. No payment asked. No flag planted. On the ice moon of Vanta 4, where a mining colony was freezing after a reactor failure, a human engineer named Priya Mehta arrived with thermal regulators and spare fusion cells. She stayed for 2 weeks, repairing systems, training workers, and even sharing meals with families. When she left, the colonists wept, not from fear but gratitude. Word spread faster than any Concord bulletin could contain. Planets long ignored by the elder races began whispering a new word, Terran, not as a threat but as hope. The Concord tried to respond. They issued warnings, claiming human tech was unstable or came with hidden costs. But when independent inspectors verified the gifts, when they saw clean water flowing on Keswick 9, heat returning to Vanta 4, crops growing in poisoned soil, they had no counter. The truth was undeniable. Back in Sol system, Earth watched quietly. There were no victory speeches, no broadcasts gloating over the Karathi's embarrassment. President Hayes simply said in a closed briefing, "We show what we are by what we give, not what we take." Project Aegis ships, now officially called Sentinels, continued silent patrols along the exclusion zone. They did not engage unless provoked. And even then they disabled, never destroyed. Their goal was not to fight but to protect, to prove that strength did not require cruelty. One evening, on the bridge of the Sentinel-class vessel Dawnwarden, Chris Dawson reviewed sensor logs. He had piloted the ship that intercepted the Iron Fang. He remembered watching the Karathi crew through passive scans, seeing them huddle together, scared but unharmed. They expected monsters, he told Priya, who now served as his tactical officer. We gave them help instead. Priya nodded. Maybe that's the real weapon. Not what we can break, but what we can fix. In the Concord capital, debates grew heated. The Varelians demanded a show of force. The Karathi wanted to blockade human trade lanes. But the Mizari, for the first time in centuries, advised caution. You mocked them for being emotional, their elder said. But emotion builds hospitals. Emotion shares food. Emotion forgives. What have we built lately besides walls? The question hung in the air, unanswered. On Earth, children played in parks under clean skies. Factories hummed with purpose. Scientists shared data openly, not for profit, but for progress. And out in the black, human ships moved like shadows. Silent, swift, and strangely kind. The galaxy had assumed humanity's silence meant weakness. Now they realized it meant something far more dangerous. Confidence. Because a species that could vanish your warship and leave you a water filter was not afraid of you. It pitied you, and pity in the cold void of space was far more terrifying than rage. When the Karathi tried to blockade a human-aligned mining colony in the Helios belt, they found themselves outmaneuvered by ships that bent light and gravity like fabric. Human vessels, sleek, silent, and crewed by volunteers like pilot Chris Dawson and tactical officer Priya Mehta, disabled the blockade without a single casualty. Broadcasts from the scene showed Karathi commanders stunned as human engineers helped repair their damaged life support. The Helios belt was rich in rare minerals, vital for advanced tech. For years it had been a neutral zone, loosely monitored by the conquered, but after human freighters began trading fairly with local miners, offering medical aid and clean energy in exchange for raw materials, the Karathi claimed the region as their own. They sent 6 warships led by Commander Jorik, a hardliner who believed strength was proven through force. His orders were clear: shut down all human activity. No warnings, no negotiations. The miners on Helios 7, a rocky outpost of 300 souls, watched the Karathi fleet arrive with dread. They had no weapons, only drills and haulers. They sent a distress call to Earth, not expecting help, just hoping someone would bear witness. But help came, not with explosions, not with threats. Just a whisper on the comms. Stand by. We're here. Then the sky changed. The Karathi sensors went haywire. One moment 6 ships held formation. The next, their targeting locks vanished, their comms filled with static that sounded almost like music. Before Yorick could react, his flagship lurched as if caught in an invisible tide. Gravity twisted around his hull. Light bent. His crew screamed as the stars outside the viewport swirled like paint in water. Outside, 3 human sentinels appeared, not from hyperspace, but from nowhere. They moved without engine trails, silent as thought. Their hulls shimmered, absorbing radar and lidar like cloth-soaking rain. Chris Dawson piloted the lead vessel, his hands steady on the controls. Priya Mehta monitored the Karathi systems, her voice calm as she spoke into the comm. Karathi flagship Iron Maw, this is Terran vessel Dawnwarden. Power down your weapons. You are violating neutral space, Jorik roared, ordering his fleet to fire. But the plasma cannons misfired. Their energy siphoned into null fields before leaving the barrels. One by one, the Karathi ships lost propulsion, then life support, then comms. Yet no hulls cracked. No lives were lost. The Sentinels used focused gravimetric pulses to disable systems without harm, like flipping switches from a distance. Within minutes, the blockade was over. The Karathi fleet floated, helpless but intact. Then something unexpected happened. Human shuttles launched from the Sentinels. Engineers in gray suits boarded the Karathi ships, not as invaders but as helpers. They carried toolkits and spare parts and oxygen canisters. On the Iron Maw's bridge, a young human technician named Leo Grant handed Jorik a breathing mask after the air recyclers failed. Your CO2 scrubbers are clogged, Leo said simply. We can fix it while you wait for your backup. Jorik stared, speechless. He had expected death or capture, not kindness. The entire event was recorded by the miners' drones. Within hours, the footage spread across the fringe networks. It showed Karathi soldiers accepting water from human medics. It showed Priya Mehta explaining how to bypass a fried navigation relay using basic wiring. It showed Chris Dawson shaking hands with a miner's child who had never seen a Terran up close. The conquered demanded an emergency session. But this time, many delegates were silent. The Varelians called it a trick. The Mazari asked why a trick would include fixing enemy ships. The truth was too plain to deny. Humanity had won without fighting. Back on Earth, there was no celebration, only quiet satisfaction. President Hayes met with Daniel Carter and Lena Ruiz in the strategy room beneath Geneva. They'll try again, she said. But now the galaxy sees what we are, and the galaxy was watching. Independent worlds that had once feared the conquered's wrath now saw another path. The mining colony of Helios 7 formally requested Terran protection. The agricultural world of Sarah 5 asked for help upgrading its irrigation systems. Even a former Karathi vassal, tired of tribute demands, sent a coded message. We wish to speak with Terrans. The Terran Accord began not with a treaty, but with trust. No oaths of loyalty, no forced alliances, just agreements built on mutual respect. Each world kept its sovereignty. Earth offered tech, training, and defense, but only if asked. And once helped, those worlds often paid it forward, sharing resources with neighbors in need. In hidden shipyards, more sentinels rolled out. Not for war, but for service. Each carried labs, medbays, and workshops. Their crews were scientists, doctors, and pilots who believed in building, not breaking. Chris and Priya became symbols, not of military might, but of human decency in action. The Karathi High Command recalled Jorik. He was stripped of rank, not for failing but for allowing emotional manipulation. Yet in secret his report circulated among junior officers. They did not humiliate us. They showed us a better way. Meanwhile, the Varelians grew desperate. They spread rumors that Terran tech was unstable, that their generosity was a trap. But when inspectors from neutral systems tested the water purifiers, the solar grids, the medical drones, they found only excellence. No hidden codes, no backdoors, just honest work. On Luna Station, a new hub built in Earth's orbit, aliens began arriving, not as diplomats but as students, traders, and refugees. A young Mizari scholar enrolled in a Terran engineering course. A Zenth artisan opened a workshop teaching bioluminescent weaving. Even a Karathi defector, tired of endless war, asked for asylum and was granted it without question. The Concord's influence shrank like a drying river. World stopped paying tariffs. Patrols went unanswered. The old order was crumbling, not from rebellion, but from better options. And through it all, humanity remained calm. They did not gloat. They did not demand apologies. They simply lived their values: open hands, open minds, open doors. The elder races had assumed power came from control. Humanity proved it came from care. And as more stars turned toward Sol, not out of fear but hope, the galaxy began to understand. The real revolution was not in the ships or the tech. It was in the choice to help even when you could destroy. That choice changed everything. A year after the summit collapsed, the Concord sent an envoy to Luna Station, a human-built orbital hub now bustling with alien traders, scientists, and diplomats from dozens of systems. They expected defiance. Instead, they found calm efficiency, open labs, and children of multiple species learning together in shared classrooms. The envoy was Kalen Voss, a mid-ranking Varelian diplomat chosen because he had once spoken kindly of human art. He arrived aboard a sleek Concord shuttle, its hull polished to a mirror shine, its crew stiff with protocol. As they docked at Luna Station's Harmony Bay, Kalen braced himself for cold stares, armed guards, or at least the sharp edge of human pride. What he saw instead made him pause. The docking bay was clean but unguarded. Soft lights glowed along the walls. Aliens of all kinds moved freely. Karathi merchants haggling over solar cells. Mizari scholars examining star charts with human students. Even a group of Zenth children chasing a floating orb in a game no one had named yet. There were no checkpoints, no scanners demanding clearance. Just a simple sign that read, "Welcome. Please be kind." Kalen stepped off the ramp, his silver skin catching the warm light. A young woman in a gray uniform approached, smiling. "Envoy Voss? I'm Maya Tran, I'll be your guide." She offered no salute, no bow, just a handshake and a calm gaze. He took it, surprised by how ordinary she seemed. No armor, no weapon, just a tablet and a name tag. She led him through the station. Everywhere he saw collaboration. In one lab, a human and a Karathi engineer adjusted a fusion core together, laughing over a shared mistake. In a greenhouse, Mizari elders taught Terran botanists how to grow light-sensitive fungi. In a classroom, children drew pictures of Earth, Virelia and distant stars, their crayons mixing colors no single species had ever used alone. "This is not what we were told," Kalen said quietly. Maya glanced at him. "What did they tell you?" "That you were building an empire. That you lured worlds with gifts to control them." She shook her head. "We don't control anyone. We ask if they need help. If they say yes, we help. If they say no, we leave. That's all." They reached the central garden, a dome filled with real grass, trees, and a small pond fed by recycled water. At a wooden table beneath a cherry blossom tree, Daniel Carter waited. He wore no uniform, just a simple shirt and trousers. Beside him sat a Karathi elder, a Mizari scholar, and two human teens. They were sharing tea and talking about poetry. Daniel stood as Kalen approached. "Welcome to Luna Station," he said. "I hope your trip was smooth." Kalen hesitated. "You're not angry?" "Why would I be?" Daniel gestured to the empty chair. "Sit, have some tea. It's from Earth, grown in Oregon." Kalen sat unsure. "The Concord sent me to understand what you are doing, why you left, why you act as you do." Daniel poured tea into a ceramic cup. Steam curled into the air. "We left because you refused to see us as equals. Not because we hated you, but because we loved ourselves enough to walk away. He looked out at the garden. And we act this way because it's who we are. We build. We share. We care. Even when it's hard. Kalen thought of the reports of disabled warships, of gifts left in place of weapons, of worlds turning to Earth not out of fear but hope. You could have taken revenge. You had the power. We did, Daniel said softly. We chose not to. Later, Kalen toured the station alone as Maya had promised he could. He watched a human doctor treat a Zenth with a broken limb, using a bone knitter designed by a team from Nairobi and Vanta 4. He saw a Karathi child, once taught that humans were savages, now playing chess with a Terran girl twice her age. He stood in a library where books floated in anti-grav fields, written in dozens of languages, all freely accessible. At the observation deck, Earth hung in the blackness, blue, green, alive. Kalen had seen it before in data files, but never like this, never with the weight of knowing what lived there. He returned to his shuttle with a small package Maya had given him. Inside was a seedling from the station's garden, a data chip with open-source schematics for clean energy, and a note, "Grow something good." Back on Viridia Prime, the Concord Council waited in tense silence. When Kalen entered the Grand Chamber, they expected excuses or defiance. Instead, he placed the seedling on the obsidian floor. "They are not our enemy," he said. "They are our mirror. And what we see in them is what we lost long ago." The chamber fell quiet. Not the silence of mockery, but of shame. The elder races had ruled through fear, control, and hierarchy. They had called humanity emotional, unstable, naive. But now they saw the truth. Emotion built hospitals. Instability sparked innovation. Naivety dared to believe in better. And humanity had not just believed, they had built it. Within weeks, 3 minor Concord members formally requested to join the Terran Accord. The Mizari opened talks for a joint research initiative. Even the Karathi High Command sent a quiet message. "We wish to learn." Earth did not gloat. They simply said yes. President Hayes gave no grand speech. She visited a school in Jakarta, where children of 5 species learned together. She sat with them, listened to their questions, and told them, "The future isn't something you wait for. It's something you make." And across the galaxy, others began to make it too. The elder races felt something unfamiliar. Not hatred, not rivalry, but fear. Not of human weapons, but of human ideals. Because ideals, once unleashed, could not be contained by treaties, borders, or ancient hierarchies. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now it watched, wide-eyed as Earth walked not toward war, but toward a future it could no longer control. Humanity had asked for a seat at the table. They were laughed at. So they built a new table, and now the whole galaxy wanted to sit.